Today I have a very special guest, Nitin, my ex-boss from Indify. What you have done differently from others, which you think made you what you are today.
I wouldn't call it, let's say, different, but I think certain things that I feel like has helped me and which probably will help me continue navigating as well. See, one is I think I'm a very curious person.
There's one thing that Indian engineers should learn from South Asian engineers.
While they are passionate about work, they want to make difference, but simultaneously they also have slightly more patience as well towards things
Yes.
coming to them in a certain way.
Do you know any company in India who is trying to build something similar as DeepSeek?
I think Kritrim tried doing something similar.
But do you really think that this job cut is actually happening because of AI?
AI definitely had some impact, but it's not
Yes.
such a massive impact as being touted.
How many hours you are putting in a week?
So I think working hours, in my opinion, is not a good parameter.
What is the primary difference that you see between a average engineer and a 10x engineer?
What makes someone a 10x engineer versus X? I think two things. One is I think it comes through a combination of hard skills as well as soft skills.
Hello guys, welcome to another episode of our podcast Tech with Sukant. Today I have a very special guest, Nitin, my ex-boss from Indify, and currently he is the CTO at ShareChat. Welcome, Nitin.
Thank you, Sukant, and it's really good to connect with you again after good 4 or 5 years
Yeah,
of break,
yeah.
and then sitting together in this setting
Yeah.
where we are going to have some interesting chat about how technology has evolved in the last few years since we connected. It's good to be part
Yeah.
of this podcast.
Yes, we have been doing back and forth for almost almost 6-8 months, almost a year, right?
Yeah,
And now we are here finally. So
Yeah, since I joined ShareChat, yes, I think we've
Yes.
been talking about this. I think life has been interesting, and finally, it's good that we are able to connect.
yes. So Nitin, you have done really good in your life, in your career so far, right? So what led to that? What were those pivotal moments? What you have done differently from others, which you think made you what you are today?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't call it, let's say, different, but I think certain things that I feel like has helped me and which probably will help me continue navigating as well. See, one is I think I'm a very curious person. Like generally, general curiosity. It's not only about technology, but what's happening into the world, leading to some of the basic questions as well, which comes to eventually existence, and then let's say the role of the God and external forces, and then connecting some of those basic things back to the way we are basically living day-to-day life. I think that's one. Then another is I think I'm coming from an educational background, and then eventually got into computer science. I think in the last 25 years or so, I think I'm still, while I have been into leadership role, I think one of the things that I'm still extremely passionate about is I'm a technologist at heart. And in fact, I just keep telling, if I had my own free will, I would have been a individual contributor come engineer today rather than actually a leader. And I believe to survive in today's technology world, people will have to be like I see individual contributors have to be able to
Yeah.
navigate things completely on their own, and this skill is going to matter even more as time progresses.
तो कुछ एक single any specific decision जो आपको याद हो, right? Which you think कि if you didn't take it back in time, तो आज कुछ और हुआ होता. कुछ do you remember anything such that like this?
I think a couple of things, a couple of turning points that I would call it specifically, let's say in my professional career, and a little bit beyond professional career as well. I think 3 incidences that I can recall. I think, I ended up joining a company named Terracotta in 2007. The way it started is I was at Global Logic, and Terracotta actually, at that point in time, I think the online businesses were really coming to their life, and serving customers at scale, which required data processing at scale, was becoming a real challenge. And Terracotta had a unique solution. They had an open source offering as well. This all was pretty new around that point in time. I ended up making some open source contribution to them. They made an offer. It was a risky thing for me to really take that offer. And this was a completely distributed remote company. I ended up joining them. And I think in hindsight, that was probably one of the best professional experience.
Okay.
The reason being is I just ended up meeting actually a lot of different minds across the world. And that was probably my first time core exposure to a lot of on the ground best brilliant mind in the world. And that's one. Second actually is Indifi. Indifi was actually a pretty interesting experience. Definitely,
Okay.
it's one is lending, but beyond lending, I think what happened is I live in NCR in Noida, and then Indifi is in Gurgaon. As a part of that, I would spend about 3.5 hours on commute. I was extremely frustrated with that commute, and I had to figure out a way to really make good use of that time. So I basically delved into a lot of other aspects. And when I was saying, like, I look beyond technology, the life beyond technology, I think those interests really emerged during that 3.5 hours that I had to figure out what to do something useful. And that led me to philosophy, psychology, genetics, astrophysics, I think a lot of other areas. I think that I feel like one turning point. Third is, I think, my entrance into the Gojek Tokopedia ecosystem, which is the largest on-demand services ecosystem of
Yes.
Southeast Asia. I think so I'm getting to see Asian world a lot more closely compared to what I've seen in past, which has mostly been localized to the Western world or some part of the India. So I think these three decisions to me seems like while were not ideal decisions when I was taking them, but I feel like I ended up adding a lot of value in terms of the way I think and I communicate.
So, talking about, you spend good amount of time with Gojek and Tokopedia. So, do you think that, in Indonesia, the products are a little more grounded from the cultural context than what is in India? India, we try too hard to replicate and build something which is more similar to West versus what happens in Indonesia, or not?
I think definitely there are cultural differences. So first of all, I think Indian demographics are very different from Southeast Asian demographics, right? Both culturally as well as from economic point of view. So
Yeah.
I think that definitely plays a role. And yeah, I think part of this, if I'll have to, while I never thought it that way, the way you're asking the question, but I think Indian allegiance moves towards Western world,
Yes.
right? Versus I think Southeast Asia being more closer to Chinese world. I think that definitely plays a role into the thinking. So when you see how the super apps are evolving into Southeast Asia, Indonesia, I think a lot of those user experiences, even the problem statement, and even when you go a little up, like the kind of investment that they are attracting,
Yes.
that's basically is
Yes.
coming from China and the surrounding regions. While when you look at India, I think specifically we have been trying to emulate more. And I think a lot of this has been coming because a lot of those companies or those leaders came into India
Yes,
primarily
right.
to do technology, engineering. So and those leaders had some influence in our thinking. So I think yes. So we definitely think more like a consumer being a Western consumer, let's say, compared to, let's say, being a Chinese consumer or Southeast Asian consumer, with our own limitation that at the end of the day, the purchasing power parity and
Yeah.
the overall ability to spend, those are quite different. So yes, so I think, so we still think like the way a US world will solve the problem with the money constraints applied on top of this. And that definitely goes in there.
Why is this, in when we talk about South Asia, not just Indonesia, if we look at Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, or maybe, Philippines as well, a lot of super apps are emerging over there, right? But in India, none of them have been able to succeed. Why is that?
I think part of my sense on this is, technology is more democratized in India compared to Southeast Asia, and then partly it's because of, again, the way India evolved in 1990s, where we started venturing into these software-based services, technology-based services, and in that sense, I think technology understanding is more broader and deeper in India, and that means a lot of people are able to get into technology-related entrepreneurship here, compared to, I think, Southeast Asia, where technology ecosystem is relatively new, specifically when it
Okay.
comes to
This
I
is
think, building the
interesting.
core understanding, and in that sense, I think a lot of people still are brick and mortar in their thinking. Obviously, in last 5 to 10 years, it has changed quite dramatically, but that talent is very, very new. So a lot of people still come with that brick mortar traditional businesses background and understanding, and that's why maybe you don't see that much of technology level breadth in some of the Southeast Asian region. And I think part of this is also is how money is concentrated as well. I think my sense is that India has democratized the money flow quite a bit compared to what it has happened in Southeast Asia as well, where it is still being funneled slightly top down, and that also constraints in terms of the number of people who can really bring in that innovation and have that firepower.
So what you're trying to say is that, the kind of resources that they have in South Asia is concentrated. So one company is, being able to spread themselves across multiple verticals compared to that in India, because there is a dedicated product or a service for every, for whatever we need, right? For taxi, for payments, for e-commerce.
Yeah, and that also then limits the competition as well. Right? It's a
Huh.
lesser number of people having access to, or
Right.
the know-how. It's not about access, the know-how, the tools and technologies. That means I think the pace of innovation at which people are really able to try out things on their own, I think that's slightly better in India compared to other
But has
Southeast
that
Asian
changed
regions.
in South Asia in last few years, or is it still same?
It's changing. It's changing rapidly for sure, and I think Southeast Asia, independently on technology, is finding their own foot on the ground. But I think there is still this gap, and this gap is just predominantly because of how different economies really
Yeah.
try to drive forward. Not like they are less tech savvy versus India is more tech savvy. It's predominantly India being open to more services, and I think in that sense, that understanding of the technology, which is there in sort of Indian educational system and some of the DNAs as well, I think that's still had to be caught up in Southeast Asia.
What is one thing that Indian engineers should learn from South Asian engineers and vice versa?
I think that's a great question. I think so. So this is one of the advantage when I moved to as a part of my journey to
Yeah.
TikTok, Gojek and Tokopedia. I moved to Southeast Asia. I spent good 3 years there, and really ended up working with the folks on the ground. I think one of the things that was what I loved about that country is I think people are quite calm actually
Yeah.
in general,
Right.
So while they are passionate about work, they want to make difference, but simultaneously they also have slightly more patience as well towards things
Yes.
coming to them in a certain way, and they also want to find this segregation between
The work-life balance,
work-life
maybe,
balance
yes,
as well.
yes.
I think India hasn't done such a great job on that front. I think with India, I think statistically we are a little bit more impatient. We want to see the outcome early, and I think that also leads to, and I've seen it firsthand. I think people pivoting a little too fast, both on the business front as well as on the even product, technology, career changes, taking other
Yes.
options, right? So I think it has worked well to the India advantage. But I think at some point in time, when I think it philosophically, as I was saying, like to think philosophically, I find it is slightly more tiring and less.
It's very exhausting
accomplishment.
as well, yeah.
Exhausting. So I think finding that balance, so that's something that could be learned from Southeast Asia. But on the other hand, I think it goes vice versa as well.
Yes.
I think I would prefer Southeast Asia being a little bit more hungry too. I think and specifically, I think Southeast Asia mostly has been following technology right now and instead of innovating onto the technology front. I mean, they're building solutions for internal consumption. They have a great user base, consumption base. They're building solutions for them, but how they really up the game for themselves where they are driving technology rather than just.
But don't you think that is in India as well? We're just following technology. We are not building any disrupting technologies as such.
I think it's a yes and no. I think India. First of all, India has a lot of know-how to build that disruptive technology. That's one thing, and that's very evident looking at a lot of global leaders as well who have disrupted this world. Those are basically, in some form, by background, have been Indians.
Yes.
Right? So India has a DNA. I think India primarily challenges slightly, I think, is the ecosystem, the environment. I think we need to solve some of these funding problem. We need to solve some of the government incentives
Yes.
that comes in individual ways. So I think it's more about ecosystem in India that needs to be given to the individual. I think companies has tried doing, like for example, India is trying to make its own stride. Private companies as well as with the government funding as well. It's in the semiconductor, which is very important, or things like Gen AI. Right? We are. I think India is looking for its own DeepSeek movement as well. So I think
Right.
India is trying. Just yeah, has India done a great job? No, I think we are behind. But there are enough seeds which are being sown right now.
Indians are doing a good job, definitely, but India as a country, I think we are still lacking behind.
Yeah.
But do you think this is maybe because there is already a lot of very good technologies available, which has probably built in the West, and there are a lot of ground level problems that still needs to be solved, and the entry of the barrier of entry for those ground level problems, to solve those ground level problems, is still easier compared to building those disrupting technologies. So people are just jumping to solving those problems with existing set of technologies rather than building something new.
Yeah, I think see, India and a lot of countries like India, they are in interesting times, right? We have a dichotomy, right? So we are a developing economy. India GDP like being close to $4 trillion, right? Versus USA GDP, which is more north of $30 trillion,
Right.
with the 1/5 the population of India.
Yes.
Right? So there is a significant difference. So India definitely has got some grassroots problem to be solved. Right? And then there is a lot of income disparity as well. So I think definitely we'll have to solve it for Indian context, and we'll have to uplift this entire lower middle class and middle class upwards as well.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think we'll also have to realize that we'll have to leapfrog. Right? We cannot just make a linear progression and then expect that we continue to catch up with the world and then become a developing nation. And to leapfrog, technology has to be one of the strongest pillar. Right? And for technology to be the strongest pillar, I think we'll have to own the technology with all the geographic disruption, geopolitical disruptions which are happening into the world. Right? They are being controlled. Like someone else who is controlling the access to some of these technologies that we have, rather than we controlling it on our own. Like for example, let's say the AI, right? AI is taking world by storm. Now, one of the critical gradient about building AI is not really the engineering talent, or ability to build the models, or be able to make sense of how the machine works. It's about the semiconductor. It's about the GPUs. Right?
Yes.
Now, so I think one of the economy in the world, which is going to be probably one of the super powerful economy, are those going to be the ones that are basically have access to some of these key resources and have the ability to build themselves their own. That's why America and then some of the companies like Nvidia, I think they will continue to make these nations more advanced and powerful. And that's where India will have to continue making some strides, that we build our own technology internally, right? We continue to not only produce good engineers who can write good algorithms, but people who can solve problem at the hardware level as well. And that's where it's going to come from government incentive and a lot of...
Maybe that rises, primarily from that R&D is not happening too much in India. Even if we look at, tier 1 colleges like IITs, that kind of money is not flowing in where people can actually invest their time and energy. I think the incentive is obviously higher in building or writing APIs than doing some kind of research work.
Yeah. I think, finally, this is about investment.
Right.
So some of
the
this
money is not flowing in the right direction, maybe, so that needs, again, that has to be top down again then.
Like, let's say when you build infrastructure, when government build road, government doesn't build road from the perspective that they will start reaping in money on day one, or they become profitable from day one, right? It's a 10-year project, right?
Correct,
so they build it now, and for next 10 years, they keep recouping, and then it becomes profitable. Right, and that means some incentive will have to come from government. Some part of Indian GDP will have to be spent onto this, right? And I think that is where, again, I think this is interesting part of probably the problem that India need to continue solving is like, how do we navigate this geopolitical landscape, which requires a lot of other investments as well, but simultaneously is technology investment where you are not going to reap the benefit on day one. And that's where individuals will have to be incentivized, because entrepreneur eventually they need to make money. Right?
Obviously, right. It's a capitalist society we are living in, so the reality is it's all about money, right? Eventually, so I think even the government needs to talk in that language. Only then it's going to convert.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Talking about AI, do you know any company in India who is trying to build something similar as DeepSeek, or do you think anything similar coming in India in near future?
I think Kritrim tried doing something similar. I think while it has not found a wide usage, but at least that was the very first attempt. And some of the projects which are now being funded by Indian government itself directly to be able to build Indian version of the DeepSeek or the large LLMs. So I think these are at least some of the projects that I'm aware of, but India hasn't been able to crack yet something which we could call truly native. Right? We have typically been taking what has been done by others outside Indian ecosystem and then fine-tuning this to the Indian context and Indian diaspora. But building something from ground up, I think that's something
that's not
we are yet to see a working.
So there is a lot of momentum happening in the AI space, right? So investors call anything that uses AI, OpenAI APIs or Azure APIs, right? They call it deep tech, but it's actually not deep tech as such, right? We are basically just building wrappers around it. So do you really think it's worth the hype? There is so much, hype around AI products, so much money flowing into the AI startups. Where do you think this is going to end, or is it again a start of another bubble which will probably burst in next few years?
So I think my perspective on this is, so whatever has happened in last few years, like post-COVID, era, I think there is definitely a serious development in the Gen AI space, and it has had a massive impact on the productivity, the way people do things. And on the other hand, I think we are right now trying to slap Gen AI on almost everything that is done
Yes.
on day-to-day basis. And that's where I think we just really need to be practical in terms of our expectation that what machine is capable of doing. And then I think part of this is, I think that's where understanding of technology, if someone understands technology well enough, probably they are able to make sense as well, that what this technology is capable of doing versus not capable of doing. See, at the end of the day, it's a pattern detection machine. And that's what a machine is being trained on, right? It's not, I think there has been a lot of hype about intelligence, intelligent machines, AGI. I think those are, at least right now, there are no evidence that we
Yes,
are
and
getting
how
anywhere
far?
closer
I
to
think we
that.
are very far from AGI right now. At least 7-8 years. We never know, right? Gen AI is still just it's just a probabilistic model, right? It just predicts which character that will be coming next. It doesn't have any intelligence. It has all the context. It has a lot of knowledge, but Gen AI doesn't have intelligence as such.
Yeah, and I think see, while it's anybody guess how long it's going to take, is this really going to happen or not in the first place? While there are a lot of claims that are being made that this will eventually happen, but those are based on the progress that have been made into the past. But people have not figured out the recipe. I think recipe which are being claimed as like, keep throwing more and more data, keep increasing the size of the models, and then eventually at some point in time, models will learn some of the hidden abstract patterns in a way that it just goes beyond the statistical pattern in the data, right? But again, drawing some of the, even if we'll have to get there, I think looking at, let's say, as a human, right? We have got about 100 trillion synapses in a relatively developed brain, right? Today, if you look at the high-end LLMs, I think they are about 1 trillion parameters. So now we need to, first of all, if we will have to get close to, let's say we are trying to make human brain, I think we'll have to make, first of all, this journey from 1
100x,
trillion to 100 trillion.
that, right? Yeah.
And this is going to be a combination of multiple things, right? I think, let's say what companies like NVIDIA are doing, they release this supercomputer, NVL72, right? Which is, can do excellence computation in a second, but on the other hand, they are power guzzlers and a lot of challenges in terms of really taking them to a point where it becomes feasible to have a 100 trillion parameter model, and then you start training this at a scale without sort of breaking the World Bank. And in this case, I'm saying World Bank because the amount of money which is required is going to be humongous, which only probably few largest corporation and even probably a combination of largest corporation can afford. So even if that happens, I think a lot of things will have to come together.
Yes.
And I think it's anybody guess right now. I think if I have to take my bet, I will take my bet that AGI, like I think we'll see some intelligent machines, and I think they are going to be much better in terms of pattern detection than what we are. And in that sense, they are going to offload a lot of things that we do on day-to-day basis, because on day-to-day basis, it's about just making sense of what we know. Machines will be able to do a better job. And I think our real value is going to be in the form of having that intuition, having that ability to be able to sort of understand why. Basically, I think if I in the form of probably statistics, I think causality versus correlation. I think machines will be good at correlation. Have machine understood causality or not? I think I have my own doubt. I think they will have hard time to understand.
Because see, the way human thing is not just about what we don't always close our eyes and think. There are a lot of other senses that is involved. What we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we smell. And I think whatever we are able to think, deduce is a function of all these parameters. It's not just one thing that makes us human, right? Plus obviously there is a evolutionary thing. There are a lot of hidden knowledge in the DNA that is there, which nobody talks about.
Things like, let's say, a lot of discoveries in the world that you will see, it comes out of emotion, it comes out of passion.
Yes, right.
It's like somebody just wanted to really sort of go beyond the boundaries which have been imposed on them. Now, machine does not have any of these kind of emotions or incentives.
Right, that empathy is not there. It's again just a machine, right?
Yeah.
You have just give it certain parameters. Based on that, it probably think about something. It will give you certain output, but probably it will not get there. But what do you think, even with Gen AI, what is going to happen in the overall economy in terms of the kind of people are already talking about recruiters getting replaced, engineers getting replaced, content writers getting replaced, right? So what have you observed? How is this impacting the industry overall?
I think my sense is there is a less of replacement. I think what is happening is everybody is becoming slightly more productive as a part of their entire.
But a lot of companies, even if we talk about Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, all of them talks about, that because of AI, we are reducing our workforce by 5,000.
I think see a lot of day-to-day work, which was repetitive work. I think that is the work which is getting automated, right? If there was let's say a job or role which required you to build some sort of enterprise data repository by getting in access to 500 APIs.
But do you really think, that this job cut is actually happening because of AI, or is it just another excuse to lay off people and everybody is following the same path?
I think part of this is, there definitely has been quite a bit of overhiring or overinvestment during the COVID years. I think money was free during COVID years.
Right.
And in some sense, people were really forced to take that money and then do something with it, and do something with it is take those bets, which probably were not realistic, but since money was free, people ended up taking it. So I think that realization is setting in. So I think a lot of 2022 world where growth was the only metric that people cared about. I think what businesses do care about now is they do care about the bottom line as well. So growth is good. We need to have top line, but a top line without a good bottom line established, I think that's something that is not.
Top line should eventually convert to a good bottom line. I think because that is what matters.
And I think that those are some of the optimization which definitely are going on, and businesses are taking a close look at the bets that they are making. They are being realistic about it, and that potentially will have some impact in terms of some of the jobs as well around to support those roles. But besides that, I think AI definitely had some impact, but it's not such a massive impact as is being touted, because I think if you take again, if history is any indicator, I think whenever there is such kind of industrial revolution, productivity improves. See what happens is as a part of that overall GDP improves. People starts consuming more, and that means there are more problem statements for people to solve as well. Money is coming in. So I think generally those tools becomes more accessible. Technology becomes more accessible. We stop doing less of mundane work. We are doing more.
But in a shorter span of time, what will happen to these people who are getting laid off, or probably whose job is getting replaced by AI, if at all?
Some people will get affected. I think people will have to reskill themselves, and I think this is the reality of the world today. I think as a part of today's reality, I think if there were disruptions which were happening once in a century, earlier they started happening once in a decade. Now they have started almost happening once every first 1 year or second year.
Right.
So what we knew yesterday is not relevant or good enough today. So I think people always will have to be on their toes in terms of keeping ahead of how world is evolving. And in that sense, I think it will require reskilling. And people who don't reskill, I think they might have some trouble in front of them.
So do you think, even at ShareChat or earlier roles, this has impacted hiring in your team as well, the number of engineers you hire, because obviously the productivity has gone up?
Not really. I think it might have an indirect influence on the thinking, but I think the way we are taking this at ShareChat, we want everyone to be more productive. And I think purpose of being more productive is not always business oriented. I think even when you put it onto the human index, I think we want to get rid of the grunt work.
Yes.
Right? We would really want to simplify things as much as possible, so that when people go out of the office at the end of the day, they feel like they had done something more productive and they have moved the ship forward. So I think some of this is for the individual benefit, some of this definitely is for business benefit, and then there is a constant push from our side as well to ensure that we continue to use this tool effectively to drive the individual productivity. It does not really change the way we look at the hiring. It might be playing some indirect impact, because obviously with the current set of folks becoming more productive, that means there will be a lesser need to go out and look for additional.
Additional that's why there is no direct influence as such, but obviously when you don't have that kind of work, obviously you will not need additional folks as well.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there is a other reality to this as well, right? See, when the current set of people become more productive, that means your ability to pick the near problem statement also improves.
Right.
So again, as I was saying, what's going to happen is, as productivity is going to improve, people are also going to find out new avenues to apply that improved productivity as well. So even in ShareChat as well, as I'm seeing things evolving, I think over a period of time, just in my last 1 year of time span, I think I've seen our ability to pick the new problem statement that has increased quite a bit, and that's a indirect effect of this productivity. So I will not. That's what I'm saying. Like, I will not always look at this in the context of that I can do actually the same amount of work with the lesser folks. I would see it in the lens of actually with the same amount or with the more inflow or the manpower, we can probably look at the newer problem statements as well and expand the horizon that ShareChat is looking at.
Okay. But see, what I have seen, that maybe senior engineers or experienced engineers, they are able to make good use of the AI. But young engineers, they get too much, the dependency on AI is too much, and sometimes they end up, being caught up in that labyrinth of using AI, trying to solve a problem using AI, and not just thinking out of the box, not getting out of it. Do you see that happening in your team as well?
Absolutely, and I think this is where I'm wrapping my head around, and I believe it's not just me or I think your question. I think the ground up, this is going to be a bigger problem because see, for you to be able to make machine work, first of all, you will have to know really how machine works.
Yes.
What it is good at, what it is not good at, and whatever outcome it is producing, is this outcome good enough or not? Right? Let's say in terms of if I just really talk like an engineer, right? When I'm asking it to produce some code, it's making a lot of choices. It's making a lot of choices about which algorithms to use, which data structure to use. How do I, let's say, make my instruction set, memory usage, my operating system more effective, right? A lot of technicalities which go there.
Yes.
And you learn this through experience, right? I think while there are a lot of great books and knowledge, and then I think the education system as well empowers you with some of this knowledge, but many of this really comes in when you are on the ground, you face those problems. Now, I think that's where the dichotomy again for some of these younger engineers is they come in into the industry and they are thrown these AI tools and asked to use these AI tools, but then they are not in a position to really be able to judge the outcome, and that means quite a bit of not so optimal output is going to flow through the system, and this is actually becoming a problem for some of the senior engineers. So some of the recent complaints I've started hearing from senior engineers is the kind of code PR requests that are coming to us. I think those are not great enough, and I think we'll have to spend a lot of time in terms of filtering those out and then providing the relevant comments. So I think somewhere that is where I think the enterprises need to really figure out that how do they make effective use of these tools, technologies, how do people evolve actually as a part of that journey. And I think my recommendation would be is we just don't throw these tools at the first opportunity on everyone. Rather, we keep them away and just have them learn the hard way first. And then once they have learned it, then they come back to these tools and say, because I've done it 100,000 times, there is no point for me to doing it. Now the next time I can just do it 10 times better just with the tools.
Yes, itself. And I'm seeing a lot of companies also banning the use of Gen AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and in fact using Cursor from the laptop, from where the engineers are actually coding and working. Maybe that is also one of the reason, because instead of making them more productive, it is actually the quality of work is going down. A lot of code is being pushed without having the understanding of why it has changed and what the impact of this change is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think companies are doing that. I think they are doing it for other reasons as well. I think there are obviously a lot of
data privacy as right. Yeah, that is also there, right?
I think that's also is the concern that enterprises need to handle. But again, just coming back to this one, I think this particular topic where I just keep actually again spending a lot of my free brain time at least. I think if we take an analogy, I think see what is happening with some of the younger kids now when they are being given some assignment, right? A lot of those kids know something like ChatGPT could come in and then just make, let's say, language super simple for them or easy for them.
Right.
And what's happening? They started leveraging those tools, and suddenly what you realize is over a period of 1 year, their ability to think in the form of language, their ability to actually express themselves or communicate themselves, that basically is drastically going down over a period of time.
Because that is getting abstracted, right? Right.
Because they never understood language in its entirety, right? And now this is just keep taking it to the next level. The more and more we use these tools, the lesser and lesser we really know the internal mechanics, and we just
But see, preaching is not going to work with these guys, right? So as a leader, what do you think? How do you control this to have a right balance between both, human plus AI, or controlled use of AI for code generation or business logic, whatever that is?
I think it's about I think that the way the enterprise journeys are starting is, I think the first journey is, I think it's still about how do we first have people use these tools. So what are the effective tools? I think that's a decision that a leader need to make. And what are the tools that are really going to make the company overall more productive and individual more productive? And out of these hundreds of thousands of tools, which are, let's say, top 3, 4, 5 tools that are really going to make a difference. I think that's maybe. I think second is going to be adoption, right? So while on the other hand we are saying that it may be doing more harm to the younger folks who are fresh out of the college, but on the other hand there is also not a consistent effective usage across the organization as well. So I think so one is, how do you make these tools accessible, and how do you ensure that they are being actually used? Then comes in this third leg of this is, are they being really used effectively or not by everybody else? And that's where the segregation of who has how much autonomy in terms of using the tools, and then through what review cycles does it go through. Like specifically, let's say the challenge, some of the challenges that we are working on is, I think it's very well settled in is that the more experienced engineers are, the more effective they are in terms of using these tools. While on the other hand, younger ones are not. So for younger ones, we are trying to limit the access in a way that they still get the core tools, but they don't just get exposed to the entire world.
Yes.
And then it has to go through a lot more mentorship as well, lot more review cycles as well, where someone senior coming in, looking at it, and then basically holding their hand through that process, so they still get to learn some of those nuances which senior folks got to learn. And that's why I'm saying, like, the productivity improvement that you eventually see over a period of time, it's not as magnified as it seems. Like when you give a prompt, it probably generates 100 line of code in one shot that would have taken you 5 hours to produce. But then the review cycle that it has to go through, right? The review cycle is the one that's going to be taxing, and then you have to do multiple iterations. So someone else end up spending 2 hours to review that code, on which you said 5 hours, and someone who is spending that 2 hours is actually a senior person.
Yes. What is being portrayed versus the ground reality is very different. The way it is being portrayed across a lot of organizations, and maybe it's more for the optics, that how they are leveraging AI, that they have been able to replace engineers, they are being able to increase the productivity by 10x, 20x, versus the ground reality is still that we are still figuring out how to make best use of these tools, how to make best use of these frameworks. And yeah,
that's one. And then I think other thing which I believe for an effective use of these tools is I think these tools are context hungry, right? Again, LLM is context hungry, but then some context is evident which they take in, like let's say GitHub repository. Right. But then there is this whole enterprise thinking, right? Enterprise and some of these things I was talking about,
business
emotions.
problem, the product problem, right?
Exactly, right? Like let's say they are code generation tool right now.
Yes.
They'll give it a prompt that what code you want to generate. It doesn't know what problem you are trying to solve. Who is your customer? Like how are they going to benefit from all this, right? And then some of other aspects of let's say how your company is going to evolve over a period of time as well. Now some of the senior leaders who are sitting in there, they're able to make those decisions and able to guide the individuals on the ground around those decisions, and that's how things evolve. So it's not just one point in time decision. Even when you write the code, right? There's a lot of past context, a lot of future context.
But even from the code perspective, these tools have again limited context window. They don't have that infinite context window, right? What a senior engineer or an engineer can have, right? They can still have, if it's a microservices, there are multiple services that is involved, right? Even if these AI agents have access to probably context of one service, it cannot have the context for 100 services that is there.
I think that is
so the impact.
That is changing. See, I think that is where LLMs are evolving. I think in fact, the key evolution which is happening over a period of time is like every month we get to see a new version of the model. Primarily what is changing in that newer version model is
the context window.
Yeah. And that's where we say it has basically improving a lot of benchmarks because it has even to look at a lot more wider data.
Right.
So I think that limitation, that is the key limitation that people will continue to solve for, and all this advancement is happening for. I think what probably companies are not solving for is the hidden context, which is not directly available on the surface on which these tools are sitting in, and how do you...
And that is not solvable, at least right now, as of today, it's still not solvable, right? That there has to be a human element to solve it.
Yes. Yeah. Like for example, like if we take some of the examples, right? If like for an engineer to be effective, ideally some product perspective will have to come in as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Product will have to think how do they write the PRD, which are there in the form that they can be fed into the machine as well, along with the engineering context. Because when I'm asking it a prompt, I also want to know what problem you want to solve, and engineers is not telling it that prompt. Similarly, the business context. So I think all of these, so business layer, the product layer, the technology layer, I think all of these will have to really think in the form that now a machine is going to use this, and how do they tailor their processes and the information to make machine more effective. So it's not one individual who is going to make the dent, it's the organization and multiple folks who are going to make the dent. Similarly, when it comes to analytics, right? How do you write your data across your different data lakes? How do you synthesize it? How do you store it? And how do you kind of put in various labeling around all that? That makes sense to machine. Right? So I think a lot of those processes will have to change as well, where people have to think that the consumer of this information is not the humans, but consumer of this information is machine.
Right.
I think that cycle is also going to take quite a bit of time.
How about AI agents? So AI agents, do you think is still just a more evolved or a fancy term for bot who can talk more like a human with Gen AI? Or is it just workflow automation? Or is it more than that?
I think it's definitely more than that. It's a reasoning engine at the end of the day. The way AI agents are trying to solve is, given a problem, they try to break it into multiple steps, the way human would break it into multiple steps. And then instead of this being one large giant prompt which is going into the LLMs, it's smaller prompts addressed onto a specific problem that's going to the LLMs to solve, and then it goes through basically a lot of either evolution or the iteration. For example, I generate the code as a part of AI agent. In the initial days 2 years back, all I would do it is, or LLM would do behind the scene, is just generate the code for my requirement, right? Or just generate the text for my requirements, whatever is used. Now it will go through its own verification, validation cycles as well.
Yes.
It will critique itself. And then after critiquing, it will take the feedback, and then it will ask someone else to resolve it, who is going to act, let's say, as a senior engineer, to resolve it further. So I think it's multiple personas that are being embedded inside the system and broken into multiple prompts, which we have started calling agents.
So far, we have been exposing APIs, which creating SDKs which can be consumed by the third parties or the external parties. Do you think we'll eventually need a separate protocol where AI agents can talk to each other, they can communicate to each other, and that data movement can happen smoothly? Or is it still going to happen over HTTP API calls and stuff?
No, that is already happening. Like, let's say MCP is a great example, a model, which is where, because by itself, LLMs don't have a lot of external world information.
Yes.
They need the external world information. And MCP, I think maybe in last 1.5 years, that has been one of the greatest development, which is a silent thing which is happening, but I think probably the most powerful one.
Right.
Similarly, agent-to-agent communication protocol, right? There are those agent-to-agent communication protocol which are going to be more binary in nature and less
faster and
human,
right. Yes.
Less sort of human. I think they still talk to each other in human language. I think over a period of time, I expect it's going to be more and more going to be the more sophisticated agent language, and which enables you to go beyond the boundaries of what can be expressed just by the human language itself.
How about fintech? So even I remember couple of times we had conversation at Indify as well, where we wanted to build an alternate underwriting engine, but it never materialized, it never happened. And I have seen that almost everybody wants to build an alternate underwriting engine, but eventually end up using the ideal credit score, CIBIL or Experian score for underwriting. Do you think AI is going to change that or not?
I think this is less of an AI problem. It's more of how incentives of the different people who are involved in these ecosystems are aligned. See, at the end of the day, underwriting is all about data.
You're right.
I think it starts from the financial behavior, but then from financial behavior, it really goes into a lot of personal and the social behavior as well. Right? And then accounting for all of these different dimensions, then we are trying to assess what is the risk of an individual being defaulting. Right? Now, first of all, this all information is federated. I think a lot of people are outside. For this information to be accessible, people will have to be part of the digital ecosystem.
Yes, right.
And so that is where one challenge comes in, is that how do we really go over that hump of the digital barrier? Then this information is sitting into the silos. Let's say I have my banking with five different banks across the world, right? Now these banks do not have any individual incentive to come together and start sharing information with each other. In fact, they will have all the disincentives not to do it, because that's where you start sort of losing otherwise the value prop that they have built for themselves. And that's where government sort of organization comes into the picture. Like CIBIL. CIBIL is forced onto the banks, right? That's forced onto the financial institution, and that's why it becomes one-stop repository for everyone to come in and really look at the financial behavior of the individual. Now, I think so. Technology exists there. I think the technology, in my opinion, while as you mentioned, I tried taking this project through DLAI, which is one of the digital lending forums in India. I think one of the technology that can make this happen is going to be blockchain. I think it's about how do I want to be able to share the data with you, but simultaneously I want this data to be anonymized as well. I think there are multiple challenges. If I share my data transparently with you, and you being my competitor, obviously I can't expose my customers to you. But on the other hand, I want to be able to share some of the behavioral data, which in general helps us as an ecosystem to be able to make better assessment about individuals. So how do you maintain this privacy, and while maintaining this privacy and anonymization, how do you share the information freely? I think blockchain is capable of doing that today. Again, there needs to be enough will. I think someone, in my opinion, will have to again force it to take us into that direction, democratize this more. And as a part of that, I think some of the bigger player, they might feel slightly more dizzy, but
and I think it needs to be more real time as well, right? To reduce the fraud that is happening overall into the lending and the financial ecosystem. Right now, the CIBIL score or the credit score is basically getting updated on a monthly basis, right? So if I want to take a loan, I can apply loan to 20 different banks as of date, right? I can get a personal loan, unsecured personal loan from 20 different banks. I'm just eligible for just one, right? Because the other 19 will not know that I'm taking loan from the other from other 19 as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and this is called loan stacking.
Right.
And that's one of the exact problem actually that I was trying to solve back in 2019 as well. And you're absolutely right. I think when me as a financial institution, when someone takes a loan from me and you are another financial institution, I need to be able to tell you that I disbursed so and so a loan of $2,000. But the challenge is, how do I do this to you without sharing the identity of the person? And without disclosing the details, which basically puts my business at risk, or whichever comes in the data privacy clauses as well. And this is where I think blockchain ability to keep the data anonymized. And on top of that, I think a lot of other things that have come in, like the secure compute or the privacy-oriented compute that happens within the hardware. I think combination of these technologies where I'm able to store the data anonymized, and then I'm able to process this data only within the secure enclave without really having to expose the individual details. I think these technologies are there out there. I think just that someone need to really pick this battle and bring all these stakeholders onto that piece of technology. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's we need to be able to do this in real time to be able to solve this effectively.
However, blockchain in the social media, talking about ShareChat maybe. What do you think? How do you think can blockchain? AI, obviously there are multiple use cases. How about blockchain in social media?
Yeah. Again, I think a lot of use cases. I think blockchain is about transparency eventually, without disclosing details. Right? That's the and I think other value proposition it does is it's a decentralized trust. You don't, and in fact that's the basic premise, right? You don't you trust machine. You don't trust any particular institution or human. For companies like ShareChat, I think being a media company, I think multiple problems. First of all, let's say content attribution or content ownership. Who has the content? Right now, you see so many duplicate contents. Right? How do you really bring in that prominence? Whether, first of all, who is the owner of the content and the content itself is authentic or not? Right? There's a big problem and this will continue to become a bigger problem with all Gen AI tools coming into the picture. Right? Then comes in the incentivization part. Right? Now, there are on ShareChat, there are content creators. These content creators are being incentivized for the support that they are providing to the ShareChat user base. Right? So that incentivization mechanism, how can we make it more and more transparent so that they know exactly for what activity they are being rewarded, instead of second guessing the organization, how organizations are rewarding. Then on top of this, I think for companies like ShareChat, and many other businesses which are ads based. Like, how do you really work with the brands, advertising, and again bring in this real transparency to the entire advertising network itself? Like, how many impressions were you served, how user engaged with those, and then what it resulted in terms of conversion and some of the matrices that matters to the brands. I think a lot of this right now sits on the internal tooling, and people trust the organization, right? And this can be broken and made more transparent with the help of blockchain, and that means a lot of these things can really be democratized. And some niche player who have not built enough trust yet, they also have the opportunity to enter into those space.
Okay. So you mentioned that duplication, to prevent the duplication of content, and basically finding the lineage of who actually owns that content or who actually owns that video. Blockchain can give the lineage, right? But it cannot give you that who actually owns it, because the duplication can happen in multiple ways, right? It could be the story, it could be the actual content as such, it could be the actual video as well, right? Or it could be a duplicate of a video with different people in place. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, so this is again a supply chain problem.
Okay.
Practically. So that means you will have to be able to trace every single node into the ecosystem, and this can only work when content producers, the content suppliers, and others who are part of this ecosystem all are coming together and leveraging the blockchain technology to be able to put in. And you're right, it's eventually it's a lineage. And need to be able to trace it back to its origin. So, and partly I think in easier landscape, it's a similar problem as in lending. Right? Lending is all about data. Data is being produced somewhere. When data is being produced and being recorded onto the blockchain, now how do you know that information which is recorded there, that information itself is authentic or not? Right. So that's where community trust comes into the picture. Initially, again, someone trustworthy is writing information onto the blockchain, and you are able to verify that it's coming from someone's trustworthy. That means someone's trustworthy is key. Eventually, in future, it comes to social proofing, where it's not me, like I put in the information, but that 20 other guys who are coming and validating that, yes, we authorize that this information is put in by Nitin, right? That's where social proofing. That's where blockchain will start giving in like all these different social proofs, which collect there, start building more.
Tell me one thing. See, AI, the moment it came, right, it exploded. It is spreaded like a wildfire, right? It was everywhere within a month of launch. ChatGPT, within a month of launch, it was everywhere. Blockchain has been there for so long, for almost more than a decade now. Still, it couldn't find it right place into the ecosystem yet. Why is that?
I think it's not absolutely that way. I think I have a slightly different opinion.
Not as much as AI maybe, but yeah.
I think first of all, there are technological challenges. Right? I think this technology will take serious effort to scale, and it's because of the nature of the design, because you are seeing decentralized and without complicating our discussion. But at the end of the day, there are so many same computation which is done by hundreds of thousands of entities. Basically, that proof of work or proof of stake protocols, right? So I think part of that is how far can you take, and that basically limits the applicability, and it becomes either you cannot just scale it up, or it becomes too costly that you cannot recoup the investment itself that you are putting in. Right, that is one. I think second is I believe it's still being used. Initially, blockchain was built for financial technology, right? Bitcoin came in, and I think Bitcoin generally has been a great decentralized currencies. It has become the currencies for some of the countries as well, and I see that it's a matter of time whether it happens in a decade or let's say in a century from now. I think money eventually going to be unleashed. Specifically from the controls of the central banks, and get slightly more well-defined and controlled by the community. But other thing that has happened on top of that is even money has become more accessible, even like fiat currency has become more accessible, like stable coins. Stablecoin has been probably one of the greatest success. Right. So I think now the thing that needs to happen there has mostly happened around dollar. So now you have dollar-based stable coins, but a lot of other currencies have not made progress on that front. I think part of this is again the country-specific circumstances or environment. Part of this is geopolitical. I think dollar would want to continue to make its prominence, and so other.
Why is it that there are a lot of economies, a lot of countries who have already adopted cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum, while there are other countries like India and a lot of similar countries, right, who have a lot of apprehension, who are kindly, who are more opposed to adoption of these cryptocurrencies. In fact, they have, levied a lot of taxes on purchase and sell of those cryptocurrencies. So why is that? And obviously, talking about central banks, obviously they have a huge benefit of controlling the circulation of these currencies. Then why are certain countries adopting while some of them are not adopting?
Yeah, again, as you said, see, incentives are not aligned. So I think for any government, for any central bank, there is not much incentive to really deregulate their currency. I think that's probably one of the strongest lever that government has, and I think part of this is required for the government day-to-day functioning as well, so in terms of be able to control the money supply. And let's say if we just take a simple example, India's got such a huge income disparity.
Right.
Now, how do you really dole out benefits to a certain section of the organization versus not other? I think a lot of this is coming to the currency, and then government ability to be able to print the currency and then be able to put it to the some other alternate use, which may not be possible, or I wouldn't say possible, but which might be very hard through the regular sections of economy and the way government generates money. But on the other hand, I think they lose a lot of power as well, right? So while that's a benevolent side of it, but on the other hand, yes, nobody would want to lose the control of the money. That's a kingmaker, right? So I think I won't see governments really coming forward and making this happen. I think it's in the individual interest, it's in the community interest. That's why it's going to be a community-led project. It's going to be a community-led adoption.
But don't you think that might lead to, because see, right now the inflow and outflow of money, the forex transaction that happens, the government is aware of those transactions. With cryptocurrencies, that is not there. And right now, what I have seen that, cryptocurrency is largely used for, black money and money laundering purposes. Right. So how do you control that when cryptocurrencies are adopted at a country level?
See, again, so there are both pros and cons. Right? So with the blockchain, I think money becomes more mobile. Right? With cryptocurrencies, money becomes more mobile, and money mobility is one of the critical factor in terms of the general health of the economy and their ability to produce the GDP, right? But on the other hand, I think as you said, rightly said, government doesn't have the incentive because government loses a lot of control. Government loses the visibility as well. I think they would want to know exactly what activities I'm doing, and the more authoritarian a regime is, the more they would want to have that kind of control.
Who to tax, how much to tax, right? So you lose all that control.
Yes, exactly. You lose all of that. And I think, as I was just saying, so for governments, not much of the incentive. Other thing that you were asking, some of the countries have done a good job in terms of adoption. I think some of the countries who have done a good job are the ones basically whose currencies do not have any legibility, and that is another force factor as well. I think they're relatively not so well off countries. There have been no
impact with this change for those countries.
Yes, right. So I think people will have more trust in transacting in the global currency with them rather than actually transacting in their own local currencies.
Right. There have been a lot of discussion happening around 40, 80, 100 hours work week. So how many hours you are putting in a week?
So I think working hours, in my opinion, is not a good parameter. But generally, I think again, there is a harder problem, right? Depends on whose lenses you are looking at that problem from. If you're looking from a Western world, right? Western world has done already a great job, right? Their GDP is per capita income is in some cases 50 times more than ours.
Right.
So they have the luxury, right? They have the time on their side where they can afford to ask some of these questions. I think India is right now in this interesting developing state where I don't think we have really this luxury to really ask this question in its own earnest. And I think like 50% of the population, Indian population, right, they are just barely meeting their both ends meet.
Right.
Under those situations, do you really ask this question, how many hours a day should I be working? Probably, in my opinion, is not the genuine question in Indian context. But I think there should still be healthy balance. Now, other question that comes in is like, does it make a meaningful difference when you work 80 hours or 100 hours a week versus when you work 60
Right.
hours a
Is
week?
it really required to, work, put in that many hours to be actually successful?
Right. Like, do you deliver some meaningful value in that additional 20 hours, 30 hours? I think no. See, I think at the end of the day, human body, human brain has a limitation, right? I think all of us have experienced a situation where you are intensely involved into some problem. It's not getting solved. You
Right.
spend multiple hours, then you give up.
Right.
And you step back to it, and then you come back next day in the morning, and suddenly you find the solution to that problem. Right. So part of this is, I think, our mind, brain, body has fixated itself into a particular thought process.
Yes, you have
Not
to
able
get
come
out of that loop, right? And then zoom out and look at a bigger picture.
Right.
Just sleep over it, help solving the problem.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that whole well-being of the body, that whole well-being of the mind, I think that's required, and that's required for the individual sustenance. But simultaneously, I think this again coming back to the 60 hours and 80 hours or 40 hours per week, to me seems like person who is well rested, person who has been able to see a little bit more meaningfully, is also able to make exponential contribution in those 40 to 60 hours compared to maybe in those 80 hours. So you might still see that person is able to deliver the productivity equivalent or more to the person who is working 100 hours a week while they are working only 40 hours per week. So I think I don't think there is a direct answer to this. All I could say is, India can't afford to have this question just based on numbers. I think we'll still have to continue working hard. India will have to work.
That cannot be our parameter. Our parameter has to be outcome.
Yeah. Like let's say in European countries, they're talking about 4 days a week.
Right.
I think we can't afford to do that, right?
Forget about 4 days a week, right? If you go to European countries, right, they literally kick you out of the shop after 6 p.m. Doesn't matter if you're shopping for $1,000 or $100,000, right? They're going to kick you out.
Yeah.
So they have that luxury. They do not care about, what is going to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Or what they're going to lose.
Right. Absolutely. That's why I think contextually, I think again, the question is very, very contextual. I think we'll have to keep working hard. Just that, I think we'll have to do it in a way that working hard does not hamper on productivity itself.
Getting things done, get the shit done. I think that is more important than counting hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about, one last question, right? So, what is the primary difference that you see, between a average engineer and a 10x engineer? 10x engineer, I would say, someone exceptional engineer.
I think, see, one is by definition that you said, right? A 10x engineer obviously is able to do a lot more work done compared to engineer who is able to do X. But I think what makes someone a 10x engineer versus X, I think two things. One is, I think it comes through a combination of hard skills as well as soft skills. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of focus on the hard skills, and also hard skills is in terms of being able to use different tools, basically having a holistic understanding of the entire ecosystem. And I think someone who is a 10x engineer has got a good understanding of what this business is trying to achieve, what product is trying to achieve, and then what are you trying to get it through technology.
Right.
And within technology as well, you are not just looking only on your own components, you are looking at the entire ecosystem of who else is doing. Let's say within a technology context, what is my DevOps team doing? See, what is my data engineering team doing?
Right,
and, what is my machine learning team doing? Right. So, and then you have, with that awareness, you are able to contribute to what they are doing, but simultaneously you are probably one of the early adopters and able to influence their roadmaps and a lot of those things. And when you look at the collective outcome, right, that collective outcome, your collective outcome actually is much better than the outcome of an engineer who is working in silo, right? And that is, and I think this extends to the soft skills as well, which is like your ability to work beyond yourself with your team and with the rest of the organizations. I think in today's context, this becomes even more important. I think specifically earlier we talked about Gen AI, how is that going to improve the productivity and everything else. I think as machines are able to do more and more mundane job, our real ability is going to be having our intuition and our ability to be able to link things together. And we can link things together only when we are connected better.
Solving a problem versus completing a task.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of other soft aspects, things like communication, and then how do you put sort of your thought process forward? How do you really negotiate? How do you really help arriving at right priorities, outcomes? I think so. A lot of those soft skills, which I think makes a 10x engineer compared to maybe a lot of these hard skills which are required. But I think combination of these two is the one which is necessary for someone to be a 10x engineer.
If somebody is pious, somebody is, let's say, X, they have rare, that awareness that they are X and they aspire to be 10x. What should they do? Where should they start?
I think my recommendation is, I think everybody need to know what and why. So first of all, what are they solving? I think a lot of the time engineers probably know what are they solving, or the folks who are in the organization, they know what they are solving. I think they might be quite disconnected from the why. I think they need to know that why, and that why is not only starting. I think why could might mean like from a CEO perspective why. I think need to elevate above. What's the problem that you are trying to solve? Let's say for the community, for your users, right? Having that understanding, having that empathy, and then putting that back into a lot of your decision making. I think that is one. Second is I think constant learning. I think in today's environment, this has become even more and more prominent. I think everyone will have to have a routine where they are checking out from execution and then spending time to really understand what else
you
is happening.
mentioned curiosity in the beginning of our podcast. I think that being curious day in, day out, probably that helps.
Yes, that curiosity, asking a lot of questions. I think also I think sometimes I think we are very comfortable with knowing what we know and not knowing what we don't know, and we even don't know that we don't know a lot of things.
We don't even want to know what we don't know.
Yeah, there's a realization that I probably know only the very small part of the world, and that opens up a lot of conversations and this curiosity that we referred earlier. And again, this all comes to the broader perspective you have, the better dots you can connect, and maybe more efficient solutions, quicker solutions, impactful solutions you can find.
Perfect.